Hey, Husker fans. This is Sam McKewon of the Omaha World-Herald, Big Red Today, and Omaha.com. We don't usually do these videos outside of our normal podcast schedule, but we will in this particular case because Wisconsin has canceled its game with Nebraska for this weekend. No Halloween treats for the Huskers on October 31st. It's going to be nothing but a nasty trick again from the coronavirus pandemic. Wisconsin has 12 cases as of Wednesday morning when we're speaking, and they are pending more test results. Those are 6 players and 6 staff members, including Coach Paul Chryst. And he is isolating, doesn't appear to have any symptoms. He is isolating, and he will have a press conference with Wisconsin's athletic director, Barry Alvarez, who is a former Husker football player, at 3 p.m. today. There we'll probably get a few more answers as to what's going on and why it's going on within Wisconsin's football program. But here's kind of what we know. Over the weekend, Wisconsin quarterback Graham Mertz tested positive on an antigen test for COVID-19. He tested positive on Saturday after Wisconsin's 45-7 win over Illinois. Later, that test was confirmed to be positive because PCR tests are used to back up the antigen test. There was also a report that Mertz's backup quarterback, Chase Wolf, also tested positive for the virus. So that was all kind of known by, late Monday, early Tuesday. On Monday, Paul Chryst said that he was confident that the game was going to be played and that going forward they'd feel pretty good about it. They weren't going to make any sort of comments on specific players, and they had not yet to this point, including on Mertz and Wolf. That was found on by anonymous sources giving that information to media outlets. Things sort of changed apparently Tuesday night. They found out perhaps there were more positive tests. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported that the game might be in jeopardy, and of course Wednesday that turns out to be true. Barry Alvarez released a press statement with his chancellor Rebecca Blank that said that due to the cases rising, they were going to pause team activities for 7 days. Now that's language that's typically used when a team goes into what's called the red designation in the Big Ten testing protocols. That means that 7.5% of the 170 people that are being tested in a given week have tested positive. That would be about 12 or 13. And this one's more crucial, that 5% of the total tests that a team would test over the course of a week have also come back positive. That's the TPR, the team positivity rate. To be clear, if a team is testing as many as they possibly can, which is 170 per day, it takes a lot, and I mean a lot, of positive tests in order to go into the red designation. It would take somewhere around 40 to 50 positive tests if you are testing athletes, if you're testing 170 staff plus athletes. If you're testing all of your walk-ons, you're testing all the guys that you think are going to play, it's very, very hard to get in red designation there. So we're not entirely clear at this particular moment whether Wisconsin was directed by the Big Ten to go into a 7-day pause, or if they chose to do that on their own and sort of reevaluate over the weekend and see where they are for next week's game against Purdue. That's an important distinction, right? Because Nebraska, I'm sure, wants to know whether or not Wisconsin was basically forced into this situation by a huge outbreak on their team, or if they're making a discretionary decision to do so out of caution or abundance or whatever language you want to use there. Of course, there's going to be wonders of, well, if it hadn't been the head coach and the 2 top quarterbacks that tested positive, if it had been a 4-string tight end and a couple of GAs, would Wisconsin be doing this? But the reality is we'll probably never know the answer to that. And it's also possible that they have so many positive tests that they have an outbreak anyway. So we'll know that more probably Thursday or Friday of this week. We'll know how many they have or have a better idea of it. And it's entirely possible that they have a huge, huge outbreak on their team, which necessitates stopping. What's important about that is if they have a bunch of players who test positive for the coronavirus, every one of those players has to sit out for 21 days. They're not going to be able to come back for next week's game against Purdue and potentially the game after that either. It's important also to note that Big Ten teams have to play at least 6 games to qualify for the Big Ten title game, unless the average number of games played by all the teams in the league falls below 6. So it's entirely possible that could happen. But at this time, the only game that appears to be on track to be canceled this week is Nebraska-Wisconsin. We haven't heard anything about the other games, so there doesn't appear to be any other testing issues that are going on anywhere else other than perhaps the Badgers. What now for Nebraska? Well, they're not going to play a game this week. The Big Ten rules don't really allow Nebraska to go out and seek another opponent, whether it's an FCS opponent or somebody else. So Nebraska's going to be off this week, and they'll have to prepare for Northwestern. I'm sure they'll watch that game on Saturday. The Wildcats are playing the Hawkeyes, and so that'll be a game that I think a lot of people will probably watch. Their next game is at Northwestern, November 7th, and their home opener is November 14th against Penn State. And there's just not a whole heck of a lot that Nebraska can do. It can only control its own situation. It's going to have to stay safe itself, make sure some players don't get the virus and that there's not an outbreak on Nebraska's team. But ultimately, there's just not a lot Nebraska can do. One of the other questions that's going to come out of this is the Big Ten's testing protocol was so stringent, 6 days a week, that it seems a little surprising that a team that had already had an outbreak in September, like Wisconsin did, would suddenly have another outbreak again. What fell apart at Wisconsin? Where was the breach? That's really a question that has to be answered because although, of course, it's entirely possible to get the virus, right? It's entirely possible to get the virus. Everybody can get it. The cases are rising in the Midwest. That's pretty common. But here's the thing. The antigen tests are so frequent that they should be able to identify, right, a positive test very, very quickly and isolate that player very, very quickly. It kind of eliminates the need for contact tracing. That's one thing. The second thing that's important, I think, to note in this situation is that if a number of people get the virus all at once, then they either got the virus in a group, they got it from the same place, or they got it sort of clustered together. Because, again, if you're testing 6 days a week, there's not a whole lot of time, and you're getting the results immediately. There's not a lot of time for people to sort of mingle. So there had to be sort of a point in which there was a gathering or there was a group and most of these people got it from each other. They were in the same setting. It seems very, very hard and very unlikely that that many people would get it in separate circumstances, 12 different separate circumstances. And so we'll have to try to figure out what exactly happened at Wisconsin because it seems very hard given the number of tests that everybody is getting. When you're getting tested every day, you're going to know pretty darn quickly if you have it. So what happened here? What exactly happened? Wisconsin tested on Friday. All these players tested. They obviously played in the game against Illinois. And then after that game, they tested negative. Or they tested positive for the virus, not negative. They tested positive for the virus after the game. Illinois has reported no new positive tests this week. It seems a little odd. And so we're just going to have to figure out exactly what happened with Wisconsin's team because it's obviously going to affect the Badgers. They may not be able to play subsequent games after this one, and it's obviously affected Nebraska because Nebraska doesn't get to play Wisconsin this week. So we'll see where it goes from here. There's a lot of math involved. There's a lot of moving parts. It's the coronavirus pandemic. We're a handful of days from figuring out exactly what happened at Wisconsin, and Nebraska will just have to see if Northwestern's good to go next week. I'm sure the Huskers certainly hope that they're in a position to be able to play the required 6 games to qualify for the Big Ten championship. They won't be playing Wisconsin. That won't be one of the teams that the Huskers play this year. All right, Husker fans, thanks for your time, and stay tuned to the Omaha World-Herald, Big Red Today, and Omaha.com.